Hey there, I just want to take a quick tour of some trumpet maintenance. And I know that as a real beginner, I would often tell people the quick and easy way for oiling was to pop out the tubes and do 2 squirts in each hole and then move it to spread it in. And that is still a quick way that you can add oil when needed, but it's not the best way. I can tell you the worst way. The worst way is using the holes on the bottom because gravity, it just falls right back out and drips all over your lap. So when you get more advanced, there's better ways to do it. And I don't teach this to beginners, because if a beginner takes out a valve and puts it in wrong and it doesn't play right, they might not know it's the instrument's problem. They might think they're messing up. And I want my players to be established that they can identify when it's the instrument's fault that it's not working before they mess with it. So yes, when you take these out, yes, they do come out. No, I don't want beginners to take them out. You have a valve on the inside. In the metal tubing is called the valve casing. The valve goes up and down inside the valve casing. And that is the part that really, right here, this is the part that really needs the oil. So the more advanced way to oil, other than what I showed you earlier, would be to prop this out, oil it, and then put it back in. I like to spin while putting in because that spreads the oil all around. So we have a little white piece sticking out here and another little white piece sticking out here. Those are called the valve guides. One's bigger and sticks out more on purpose. Inside the valve casing, there's one spot that you can't really see in the video, but there's like a divot that the valve guide falls in or clicks in. If you don't line that up correctly, then the valve won't let the holes and air line up to get air through the instrument. The other thing is, if you take this whole top part off, yes, this all comes apart. You shouldn't have to take all this apart. But if this comes apart and that white piece gets put in backwards, then even when the valve guide lines up, it won't line the holes up. So you don't need to take all those parts off. So the better way to oil the valve is to take the valve out of the valve casing, add some oil to it, spin it so that we get the oil spread around, and then close it. There's valve 1. Okay, doing the same thing with valve 2. Do not take them all out at once. There are some videos about giving your instrument a bath. I do not recommend that for middle school students. I've had more students damage their instruments doing that than most anything else. And I don't want you to damage your instrument. One little tiniest dent out here won't matter other than cosmetic, but the tiniest ding or dent on a valve or a valve casing will make the whole thing not work. And then we do valve 3. Once again, take the valve out and add the oil. Now, most all of the newer trumpets have the valves labeled. This one has a 3 on it. I don't know if you can see it. There's a 3. Some of the older ones and some brands don't. So if you take them out all at the same time, you might get them back in the wrong order. Make sure that they go back into the correct spot. Doing one at a time, make sure that that is done. All right, so there's the more advanced way to oil your valves. At some point, the valve casing may become dirty, in which case you need to use the valve brush, but I am not teaching you how to do that today. Please do not use the valve brush based on this video. There's a snake, not teaching you that today. There's a mouthpiece brush, not teaching you that today. Although I will say if it goes in from this end, you're rubbing off the silver, it's meant for that side. All right, so the other thing that you want to do before your valves get stuck, when they start to move not smoothly, is you want to use tuning slide grease on them. If you don't have tuning slide grease, you could buy some, borrow some from a band friend, ask your band director to. A tub like this, if you use it properly, could easily last more than the 7 years of band that most people do in middle school and high school. Saxophones go through it more quickly, clarinets go through it more quickly, but brass, you hardly use any of this. So the basic idea, if it's dirty, you take off the old grease first. So if it's dirty, you'd wipe off the old grease. And then you just get a little of the new grease and rub it on. everywhere that's the interior part. This is exterior. I'm rubbing it where it's interior. And then you push it back together. Now, there's lots of people that have specific methods to it. Some people think that you should put in one side at a time and twist it when you're putting it back together. Some people don't. You'll notice I used a very small amount and there's not any extra left over. Almost every time a student does this, they'll put way too much on, and when they push it together, there's a huge glob of it. I'm going to do that on purpose on the next one, but if that happens, you have to wipe it, not with your polishing cloth. If you wipe away excess grease with your polishing cloth, then all you have done is ruined or made dirty your polishing cloth. So there's a time to use a tissue. Okay, so here I'm putting on too much grease. If it was really dirty, I would clean it first, but this one was already fairly clean. So because this is too much grease, you're going to see when I push it together that there's a big blob of grease that gathers right where they come together. Oh, that looks horrible to me. So you don't want to use your polishing cloth. You want to get a tissue that you can throw away, or a paper towel if you don't have any tissues, or if you can't find anything, go to the bathroom and grab a few squares of toilet paper. You want to clean away all that extra stuff and put it in the trash. You do not want all that extra grease on your instrument. And if you leave it on your instrument, yes, it'll collect dust and gunky and dirty. It would also rub off on your clothing. So you want to do for a trumpet the 4 tuning slides. The thumb one, the ring one, the middle one for second valve, and the main one. You want to do all 4 tuning slides. After you get your tuning slides all greased, the ones that you move while you're playing, like triggering out for your low D or your low C sharp, sometimes people will use a mix of some grease and then a spot of oil, and the oil just loosens the grease a little to let it move easier. And you can certainly go with whatever your individual teacher recommends, but that's really common to grease it and then add a spot of oil just to make it flow nice and smooth while you're triggering out. The final thought is the bottom valve caps. Gravity works in a negative way here because all the gunk gets down there and these become stuck, very common. So what you do want to do when you're maintaining your instrument, we're looking at that every other month or every 6 month type when you're doing a more deep cleaning. You want to take all of these off. You want to take them to a sink and wash them. I have a brush that I bought at the dollar store. It's like a toothbrush, but it's never been in my mouth. I use that to clean the junk, and then you have to let it completely dry. If you put it back together wet, it's going to rust and it's going to stick together. So I wash it. I let it set overnight to dry it. I make sure it's completely dry. I put the tiniest little bit of tuning slide grease on the threads where it screws together, not on the bottom, not on the part that's like, doesn't touch metal, just right where this screws together metal to metal, the tiniest little spot of tuning slide grease, and the act of screwing it together spreads it around, and it really just protects it from rusting and getting stuck. Won't last forever. Next time that you're doing a deeper clean on your trumpet, make sure that you go ahead and clean those again, get all the gunk out, and wash them, let them completely dry, and put them back together. So the final thought is this is not the deepest cleaning there is. I do not want middle schoolers trying to bathe their instruments. That's a more complex thing that we're not getting into now. All right, that's how to maintain a trumpet.